Power scaling. It can be so fun, and it can be so frustrating. But, if it wasn't fun, why would we do it? This video is going to be mostly unscripted. Okay, this video is going to be entirely unscripted because I'm way too busy trying to finish writing my book. So, in the meantime, you guys can get this as I discuss Thomas Astruc and his comments on what power scaling Miraculous Ladybug is like, which it should be a source of great fun. So, a while back, someone posted a tweet pitting the Miraculous from Miraculous Ladybug up against My Hero Academia or Class 1A. It wasn't entirely clear. Either way, you guys all know my opinion on that is basically Miraculous sweep. And it was pretty interesting to realize that most of the people reacting to the tweet basically agreed with me. Which, makes sense. The Miraculous have two different forms of time travel, like one reality warper and the ability to turn off other people's superpowers. It's ridiculous. And before long, I even saw one pitting them against the Incredibles, and I found myself wondering, is this gonna start a trend of people realizing exactly how overpowered these characters are? And then, like many things that happen on Miraculous Twitter, Thomas Astruc appeared with a stroke of lightning, or with a stroke of his phone's Twitter account. Yeah, Thomas Astruc started commenting on it, and it was interesting because I do have opinions of when a creator starts power scaling their own show. Because I do think that they are usually a valid source of understanding exactly what's going on in the show. But also when they say something like, my character can beat up Superman, I don't take them seriously because, well, it's Superman. And of course you think that, but that doesn't necessarily make it true unless you've actually successfully written the power scale around that. But not many people do. I think someone once said that Homelander could beat Superman, or was it Omni-Man? Either way, depending on the situation, we should all know the answer is like, no, whoever it was, they're not beating Superman. So that makes Thomas's tweets about the power scaling of Miraculous rather interesting because he says a bunch of things that I think are worth taking note of, and he says some things that I think are hilarious. But he also says it around the concept of whether or not the Miraculous can win fights, which is why the fact that the initial quote tweet he made was, I know I'll sound a bit partial, a bit, but the only team who could realistically beat the Miraculous is the Justice League with the Trinity in it. And reading that just made me think, oh god, Thomas, why? Why are you doing this to us? It was so fun. Why must you say this, which we all pretty much automatically know isn't true? Because unless you're talking about a specific form of the Justice League, like the live action movies, or I haven't looked much into the power scaling of the DCAU, but either way, unless you're talking about a specific form of the Justice League, you're gonna be hard pressed to find someone who can beat them. Because isn't the meme about the fact that Wally West solos your favorite verse while dancing to what's his theme song? My Ordinary Life. So yeah, beginning the conversation by basically saying the Avengers, the X-Men, any team that doesn't essentially have Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman on it is automatically going to lose was a crazy thing to say. Especially crazy because I've looked into these tweets and I don't think he actually believes that unless he kind of underestimates the intelligence of everyone else. But then he says something that I think is worth looking at just purely from the author talking about the power scaling of this show. Because when someone starts talking about the fact that Scarlet Witch can easily warp reality, which might include Gimme because she has the power to affect the Omniverse, I think this is an important point for me to point out that I'm not really a comic reader, so I'm not that familiar with comic book scaling besides the fact that it occasionally gets ridiculous. Thomas's response was basically, Gimme is all there was, all there is, and all there is will be. The only way to warp it is to make a wish. Basically, Thomas is talking about the idea that Gimme is reality, so surely nothing within reality can warp it. And I said, I don't know much about comic power scaling, but I do know enough to know that warping all of reality in a way that logically shouldn't be possible is kind of the bread and butter of a character like Scarlet Witch, right? Like, yeah, Gimme is reality, but I think there's a reason why the only time I ever hear of Eternity from Marvel is the fact that he's being fodderized by the latest big threat that the heroes are gonna have to take on. It's rather limiting to say that just because Gimme is reality, that doesn't mean someone who could probably definitely warp reality can't do it. Which is odd because a later tweet he has involves him saying that someone shouldn't ignore how the rules of Miraculous work just so that they can't beat someone else, which we will get to. But like, I feel like when he's talking about Miraculous, that's kind of what he's doing, in that he's ignoring how crazy stuff can get in the things he didn't write to justify why the Miraculous are overpowered. And like, they are overpowered, but they're not that overpowered. Moving on to the next image. These images aren't in order, by the way, they are just in the order that I got them. And you will notice that there's a point where they change, because the first set of images weren't even ones that I personally found. They were from a compilation of someone tweeting about Thomas talking about it, because, you know, he has me blocked on Twitter. So Thomas's next set of tweets says, "That's why discussions about who's the most powerful in the other universes usually can't be logically resolved. In the Miraculous universe, it works differently. A power can't be topped by the same power, it can only be neutralized by another power. Like, the Lucky Charm neutralizes the Second Chance, or Cataclysm neutralizes Shelter, or Minotaurus' invulnerability would neutralize the Clout, for example." Now this is interesting because it gives us notes about how the Miraculous interact with each other. He's saying that the Lucky Charm can neutralize essentially the power to reset time and start over again, which we've actually seen happen in the show. I believe it was in the Intuition episode that Gabriel apparently does restart things over and over again when his villain loses, but Ladybug just gets a new Lucky Charm that allows her to win. So he's talking about how Chat Noir can destroy anything, which would include destroying the protective bubble and all that. But then you look back at his first image and realize that he's kind of shutting down other abilities of the same mold. Pretty much he's saying that Chat Noir's destructive power is automatically greater than any other destructive power that's brought in front of him, which, like, I suppose you could have a discussion about his mental limits and how seeing someone else do something might make him realize he should be able to do it as well. But also that's like the definition of a no limits fallacy, right? Like, what if someone is an omniversal creature of destruction? Is the fact that Chat Noir's power is destruction supposed to mean that it automatically loses to him or something? So yeah, this is kind of a prelude in understanding exactly how Thomas thinks about power scaling Miraculous to other verses, and I'm like, yeah, you do come off as partial here, Tom, you really do. His next tweets are, well, I don't have the original, but I do have his response. "Nope, that's not how it works. Minotauro is immune to any power, period. The only one who can neutralize it is King's Monkey's Pagale." I'm guessing that's what the power is called in French. That's the problem with characters from other universes whose powers are based on magic or similar to, like Strange, Wanda, or Fate. The definition and logic of their powers is so loose that the writers use them like a cheat code. I never managed to get into this type of stories. Okay, let's address the first one first. Minotaur's power works on any power, period. So I believe he's trying to justify the idea that even if you take Minotauro into a different universe, powers there are also neutralized. And that makes sense, but when he talks about Minotauro, you get the idea that he doesn't understand that facing someone your powers don't work on and still managing to beat them, like, this is gonna sound kind of patronizing, but I get the feeling he doesn't pay much attention to what other characters have to deal with and is overestimating the uniqueness of the Miraculous powers. And like, some of them are a bit unique, but like, Minotauro would be a problem, but if you put him up against a character like Strange or Wanda or Dr. Fate, I get the feeling that in their decades of history they've come across at least one being that they couldn't just conventionally use magic on. You know, on my second channel, which is mostly dedicated to power scaling, I actually put Minotauro up against Gojo, and he lost. Not because any of Gojo's powers would work, But because in the way I scaled them, I figured that Gojo would find a way to harm Minotauro even past that. Because like, it's not like he's immune to having a building dropped on him. I suppose he potentially could become immune to that, but he hasn't figured that out yet. And that's like a big thing I often find myself thinking about in regards to the Miraculous. The way that their abilities are described should make them so much more powerful, but be it the plot or their own lack of urgency or creativity, they just don't do it. I still can't believe the way they interpreted Ladybug can create literally anything was to make those useless charms that so rarely accomplish anything besides extending the runtime of the episode. Was that why they still exist? To extend the runtime of the episode? They've kind of lost all meaning as something that's supposed to stop people from getting akumatized because it's kind of easy to get around them. And of course, there is the second image where he says that he can't get into stories where the powers are so loosely defined that writers can use them as cheat codes, because it's like, do you watch your show, sir? I mean, that's another thing for me to say, but I really do find myself asking it a lot when I see him talk about it. Do you watch your show, sir? Like, you do keep powers very vague in a way that allows you to write yourself out of corners. Like, I talk about the show a lot, and the idea that Thomas Astruc is criticizing other creators for writing their powers in a way that allow them to use them as cheat codes to get out of situations is just, wow, I can't believe he did that. I think this is the meanest I've ever been to this guy, which might be surprising considering I'm pretty sure being mean to this guy is like a big staple of criticizing Miraculous Ladybug. Okay, so next someone asked, could JL Dark beat them? Constantine, Zatanna, Dr. Fate. I wonder how magic would work against them compared to brute force. And his reply is, Minotauro alone would take them. He'd be immune to their magic and hammer them easily. Okay, so like, once again, I'm like, yeah, but there are ways to get around the fact that Minotauro is immune to magic. Launching the ground he's standing on into space. He should have access to a spacesuit. Okay, so it's not like this couldn't be an interesting question, but it raises one thing, like, they have magical defenses. Do they stop working when Minotauro touches them? Like, if Dr. Fate throws up a shield, does Minotauro touch it and it immediately stops working? Because there's a difference between being immune to being affected by powers and just shutting down other people's powers, and that's King Monkey's ability. And the fact that King Monkey's ability is that makes me think Minotauro shouldn't be able to just make the abilities of the characters he's fighting not work. He just is immune to being directly affected by them. And Constantine, Zatanna, Dr. Fate, these are characters that I believe are smart enough to get around such a limitation. But it's like Thomas doesn't think they have a way to get around being immune to the power, even though he was involved in writing season 5 and should be aware of the fact that, you know, he's written situations where Ladybug has had to get around the Ox's power, like, more than once. So the idea of someone else doing it, I guess he's operating under the idea that the character wouldn't be very aware of what Minotauro can do. It's just, the character should be able to figure it out. Okay, here we come to another tweet that mixes Thomas underestimating other superheroes and giving us more info on how the power scaling in Miraculous works. Someone asks, what's stopping a team like the X-Men or Avengers from kicking their asses? And he says, all Miraculous have enhanced strength, speed, and agility and are nearly invulnerable. They cannot be harmed or stunned by regular physical means. Only that makes a lot of heroes ineffective against them. So, I've already talked a lot about the idea that heroes do have a history of getting around really tricky powers. But then, I take a step back and I look at what he says about the Miraculous. Because, yeah, them being immune to physical damage is actually something generally applied in the show. Like, they take hits from all sorts of extremely powerful characters and get up like nothing happened. But also, like, they're not completely immune to it happening, because I distinctly remember Chat Noir being severely harmed when he was fighting what was basically just a physical brawler in the form of Werepapa. Or is it Weredad? Marinette's father got turned into a giant wolf and started beating the hell out of him. And yeah, those physical blows, they definitely had an effect. So unless we're saying that Weredad had like beyond infinite strength, I guess. They're not completely immune to physical damage because of an episode that you helped write. And so, once again, we're in a situation where the fact that I watched the show he's talking about has made it so I don't believe him. I guess it is interesting that he's implying that they scale in speed to the X-Men and Avengers, which... Oh, no, I definitely believe that too, because I have calculated the highest tiers of speed scaling in the show to be in the massively faster than light ranges.
What is all this gibberish?
It's gonna be a long night.
Alright, let's just look at the next image. Because the rules and powers of the Miraculous universe follows a logic, like chess board game. If you want to play chess but say the rules don't apply to you, then no game can take place. You want to oppose Miraculous and Marvel characters, then you must respect the logic of the characters, and the logic of Minotauro is immune to superpowers, even Wanda's. Okay, I think this is where I was feeling a bit off in reading Thomas's tweets, because it kind of feels like he wants other people to play by his rules, but doesn't want to have to play by those rules. So if the rule is that Gimme cannot be affected by another reality warper, then the fact that someone else can reality warp a being that should be about Gimme's level doesn't matter to him, because it's the rule of Miraculous. Am I explaining this right? I'm not that articulate without a script, you probably noticed. But basically he's trying to say that the Marvel heroes need to follow the rules of the Miraculous characters, which is fine. Like, yeah, Minotauro is immune to any superpower, even Wanda's. Like, I guess that is generally fine, unless you're trying to make an argument that she outscales the thing that makes him immune, which I'm gonna tell you right now, I've scaled how powerful the Kwami are, and they're like multiversal at least. So yeah, she'd basically just have to be at least at that point before you can start making the argument that, look, what I'm saying is he's right in that you can see that, but it also feels like if a rule from a different universe comes into conflict with how he's written Miraculous in a way that isn't advantageous, then he's gonna call that not following Miraculous's rule. Like, am I making sense? Like, if Wanda can warp something bigger than Gimme, then simply being Gimme isn't enough of a defense anymore, and if you're gonna play by the rules of the chess game, then you have to accept that, right? You know, I've realized I've been saying all this, but I don't actually have complete confirmation that Wanda can do it. I don't know, maybe we move up the tier to a potentially higher scaled universe warper, like Baby Franklin Richards. I don't actually know who is stronger, but I do enjoy the meme of Baby Franklin Richards being stronger than both Scarlet Witch and Phoenix Jean Grey combined, so you understand it, right? Next. Well, the power of concepts is limitless, so yeah, the rabbit hole can be really deep. Also, I just came to the conclusion that Rooster Bolt could just copy almost every DC and Marvel power if he's strong enough. Thomas Astruc. Yeah, he could. The imagination is the only limit, and Mark has the big one. This is basically something I already knew. He can have any power as long as it's not a power a different Miraculous has. Cat Noir could destroy a whole galaxy if he wanted to. Nothing can pierce Carapace's shelter. Pigala's gift works on anything that wants something. Polymath could split until she reaches the size of atoms. Okay, so everything in this tweet is something I basically agree with, except the Carapace one. Carapace's shelter gets broken like a lot. Like, a lot. Okay, maybe a lot is much, but like, it gets broken quite often. Like, genuinely, in my mind, Carapace's shelter is the weakest Miraculous power because of just how much it does not work in keeping damage from getting past it. And I've seen people try to justify this by saying that maybe it's just that because Carapace isn't putting enough energy into it, which like doesn't work because there aren't really instances where a Miraculous's power is supposed to be weaker than it actually is unless the character is actively holding back, and it's like you're shielding yourself from being attacked or trying to keep dinosaurs from escaping. Why would you actively be making the shield weaker than it has to be? Hawkmoth was a full-grown adult without any health issues, and he still managed to make a shield, and Chat Noir broke that shield with his staff. So that's basically the biggest problem with this tweet. Nothing can pierce Carapace's shelter. You did not write that into the show. Like, it's so funny that I found this specific image of the dinosaurs breaking through the shelter with Thomas Astruc's name on it as one of the writers. Oh, here's a big one. Now, in terms of raw power, Ryuko is greater than Thor or Storm. Purple Tigers is greater than Hulk or Colossus. Okay, so I've heard that Thor basically pushes masses of multiverses around like they're nothing, and Storm has recently reached the Phoenix's level as an outerversal being or something, and Hulk is some sort of embodiment of evil and omniversal power from the one below all that's kind of immortal. Yes, I even heard about that before the death battle that put him up against Godzilla. So like, even with how high I scale the Kwami as basically multiversal conceptual beings, it's like, I guess you could make the argument that they match in raw power, but in terms of feats, that's gonna be such a hard thing to say. And once again, it just feels odd for the actual creator to be trying to make arguments that the characters he created could beat Thor and Purple Tigress. I genuinely don't know anything about Colossus, by the way. I'm sure any comic fan who has managed to watch this far is gonna tell us about it directly down below, but yeah, like, I do think the Miraculous have a lot of raw power, but I also don't believe that raw power translates very well. Like, can Ryuko destroy a planet? I believe she has the AP to match planetary level based on scaling, but if she tried really, really hard, could she create a storm that completely enveloped the universe? Because that's kind of the baseline of what I think Thor should be able to do. And I feel like if you directly ask Thomas that, he wouldn't say yes. Actually, what am I saying? I feel like he would say yes on Twitter, but he'd never actually write it into the show. And then there's the reply. If we're considering MCU Avengers, I may agree, but with comics, it's really hard to convince me that RN Ryuko, I think it means right now, that RN Ryuko is stronger than Thor. Sure, she has limitless potential, but Thor also does, since he is the god of thunder, and as a god, he does have enhanced boosts. Hulk is just too powerful. Then Thomas's reply, Ryuko is stronger than Thor. Like, that just feels odd to hear him, right? Purple Tigress is stronger than Hulk. Why? Because miraculous powers are not defined following power skills. What I dislike in comics and manga is characters suddenly becoming extra stronger than their opponent to solve a battle. So yeah, that was his response. Oh wait, there's still more. So in Miraculous, if a character has super force as a special superpower, it means that he/she has potentially unlimited super force. Raw battles are solved like a chess battle. It's not about raw power. Each character is the best in his specialty, but about strategy. It's how you combine powers to win. Here's an analogy. If characters with super force equals towers, then the thing is programmed to move forward 3 squares, Hulk 5 and Superman 7 for example, but their powers are based on a power scale. Purple Tigress's cloud is programmed to move forward on limitless squares. So I guess this is authorial confirmation that the characters all have infinite power? Because that's like one interpretation, or you could interpret the fact that he is aware that a lot of comic characters also basically have universal unlimited power, and he's basically saying that those are still limited compared to the power of the Miraculous, and it's some my character can beat up your character, I'm a 5th grader in on a playground level logic, because like I have watched this show and I do not get the impression that anyone who is writing this thinks that the characters have unlimited power, except maybe Ladybug and Chat Noir. I suppose I could be wrong. You don't want to go into power scaling with immediate assumptions or you'll find yourself just denying reality, but it just feels odd, right? Okay, so someone replied to him, this is all wrong. Superman and Hulk's strength is literally unlimited, and Thor has demonstrated universal levels of physical strength many times. Purple Tigress hasn't even demonstrated the big city level. She's powered by the god of exaltation. Oh, this might be the most blatant statement that the Kwamis are just gods. Like, I know they are, and I've been interpreting that, and I believe the word Kwami is basically a portmanteau that involves the Japanese word for god, but I think this is the first time he straight up called them gods, which gives her a one-punch-like unlimited power. This is genuinely an odd way for confirmation that these characters are all just infinite. I know multiple power scalers who would enjoy reading this, But I guess I'm not one of them because I do have a rather limited skill for how powerful the Miraculous are. Like, I still basically have them at solar system level, except for Cataclysm and Lucky Charm. I could be wrong. I'm just waiting for the show to show me that. But author statement Miraculous Ladybug scaling is going through the roof with all these tweets, by the way. But the person he's talking to replied, well, some comic characters also draw their powers from gods or forces with unlimited energy, like Juggernaut with Moon Knight or Flash with Green Lantern. Wait, no, Juggernaut gets his power from a magic totem, Moon Knight gets it from Khonshu, the god of the moon, Flash from the Speed Force, and Green Lantern from the emotional spectrum. Though apparently that's changed to some sort of parliament of colors recently. I don't know. Also, potential does not equal practical power. Thank you. That's true. If we take what they can really do, they quickly lose to Hulk, Superman, or Thor. I think it's important to note that he basically did say they lose to Superman at the very beginning of all this. Thomas replies, she's powered by God of Exaltation, which gives her a one punch like unlimited power. There's no right or wrong here. I'm just explaining how she's written. Wait. Did he just copy and paste what he already said? Yeah, he just copy and pasted his last tweet. It's like he's denying that anyone else could write something as ridiculously powerful as he has chosen to write, even though they totally do. If she has unlimited power, then why her punch only destroys only several quartals? And if all Miraculous has kind of power and they could easily deal with any villain, even individually, I think the Marvel DC characters will win simply because they have demonstrated more feats. Okay, this is the point where I kind of disagree with this guy because, like, that comes into the difference between AP and DC. Like, there are some characters who can punch out someone who could survive the planet exploding in their face. But if they punch the planet itself won't explode. They basically have the force of planet breaking within them, but they don't destroy to the level of a planet. That's kind of the difference between AP and DC. I mean, Superman could destroy a planet, but even when he's delivering planet-destroying punches, he's not actually destroying the planet around him. Then again, I guess Superman is the wrong example because he could destroy a planet, even in the DC scale. Let's see what Thomas's reply is. She doesn't destroy more because she doesn't need to. In Miraculous, all villains and heroes are nearly invulnerable, therefore stories are never solved by knocking out someone. Okay. And the final reply, fair point, but I still stand by my opinion that Marvel DC characters will be able to win because some of their insane feats and abilities. That's entirely fair. You don't have to agree with me. Like, I'm sure there's at least one person who's made it this far into the video who thinks I'm absolutely crazy for how high I do scale the Miraculous. But yeah, that's kind of it. Okay, let's move on to a different conversation. Or rather, let's move backwards because this seems to be connected to the idea of Minotaur taking on magic users. He couldn't. Z alone can take Miraculous team. She's shown better feats, abilities, and hacks. Magic in DC is not magic in Miraculous. Just because Minotaur is completely invulnerable in his own verse doesn't mean he'll be invulnerable to characters from other verses. I feel like that's a bit disingenuous because, like, at that point, it's like you're not actually trying to figure out who's stronger. You're trying to rules lawyer your way out of even letting a fight happen in the first place. This happened when I made an edit that said that Ladybug is stronger than Insomniac Spider-Man, and I got like I got a lot of replies. I will admit I definitely got way too into arguing with those people instead of not procrastinating in whatever I was doing. I think I was on holiday, so I didn't really have anything to do. But basically, I got into a lot of arguments, and one of the worst ones was definitely Ladybug's power won't work in a different universe, so she automatically loses, which was just absolutely terrible. It's, as far as I'm concerned, you're basically just admitting you don't think the character you're talking about will win, so you're trying to create a scenario where the fight will never happen in the first place, and that's just ridiculous. But I was like, oh yeah, right. So basically, I disagree with this guy. If we're going to have a real comparison over who's stronger, then you can't just ignore something like the idea that someone who is immune to magic in one verse won't be immune to magic in another. Like, if we take Asta and put him up against a magic user, are we going to talk about the fact that their magics are different to try and say no? That doesn't seem right, right? What was Thomas's reply? Yes, he would. Good writing equals respecting core elements and rules of characters of both universes, not twisting one in favor of other because it fits your views. He's right, but I refer again to Gimme versus Scarlet Witch. Respecting both universes means not putting one versus rules above the other. Minotaur's invulnerability is a miraculous only mechanic, not something that automatically overrides how another universe works. Gaming it does is the opposite of respecting both rules. And Thomas replies, what you say is like saying let's remove spider powers from Spidey and have him fight another superhero to see who's strongest. Sorry, but that doesn't make sense. So we agree. I basically agree with this guy. I'm sure me and Thomas basically agreeing is the greatest twist some of my viewers have ever seen happen, but it does happen occasionally. I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't like Miraculous enough to keep watching it. No, I mean, just because Minotaur is completely invulnerable in his universe doesn't mean he'll be the same in another. Magic in DC/Marvel is completely different from Magic Miraculous. I can't be sure it won't work on him. Okay, but you can't be sure it will. Is this video going to end with me and Thomas on the same page after everything? Another set of tweets. Sir Astruc, do you think the Miraculous can defeat Goku, Dragon Ball Z, and or Winx? Probably, yes. Oh, just when we were reaching common ground, he says that. Like, do you think he knows how powerful Goku is? I'm pretty sure Kung Fu was directly referencing Goku to the point where it's basically the poster child for racial caricature and Miraculous Ladybug. If you don't know about the comic where Ghetto Blaster appeared. Thomas, an honest question. If Thanos performed the snap, what would happen to the Miraculous team? They won't be able to sense it, prevent it, or withstand the effect. It would be an immediate defeat. I doubt that Infinity Stones have an effect on people who don't belong to their universe. Okay, Infinity Stones don't work outside of their universe. But let's say they do. Minotaur wouldn't be impacted. Holders who disappeared would be replaced by new holders. That's all. The greatest twist of this video is that Thomas has apparently forgotten about the get out of jail free card that is Bunnix, because she's basically the answer to how that happens, in that, yeah, the Miraculous can figure out the snap's gonna happen before it happens, and then they'll work to prevent it. Okay, last image. What would be the counter to Professor X? About 19 people could be controlled at once by his power. His power does not require targeting and not physical. Arguably not a superpower, as he's a mutant, it's a natural ability. I agree, but telepaths are a cheat code. Logically, any character capable of manipulating thoughts beats everybody instantly. Writers have to artificially tweak stories to remain interesting. That's why I didn't put any in Miraculous. Oh, so the X-Men do win! And I'm pretty sure the Avengers should have a few rosters with telepaths on it, so I guess all the way back to his first tweet, he's just wrong. As if they have a telepath who can control minds, that's just the end of the Miraculous team. That's why I didn't put any in Miraculous. Okay, wait, there are people who can control minds. They just have conditions. He actually even talks about it later. The closest to a mind controlling power I put in Miraculous is Pigella, but it comes with constraints. She has to touch the opponent. She doesn't have to touch the opponent, she has to let her power touch them, but I guess that's what he means. Also, no, I very distinctly remember Simon Says, who, if he hits you with a card, can make you do anything. That is actual mind control. Pigella just puts you in the Tsukuyomi, essentially. So, I disagree, even though I also agree. I just think he's getting the details of the show mixed up. And then, you know, he's far busier than me. He doesn't exactly have time to remember everything that's happened in this show, even though the thing he's busy with is writing the show, and I'm busy memorizing shit that happens in like 4 different TV shows for this YouTube channel. I'm gonna be honest, I find Powerscaling less fun if the creator is so directly involved in making statements about it. Sometimes he makes tweets I agree with, and sometimes he makes tweets that make me go, why don't you watch this show? I know you watch the show, but why are you trying so hard to convince me that you don't? So yeah, those are basically the tweets I wanted to talk about in this. I'm looking at the time, it says 45 minutes. So yeah, I don't really take him that seriously when he's talking about comparing them to other characters, because I think he's underestimating them, and at points I feel like he's just trying to insist that the characters he's created are really powerful, even if he hasn't exactly written it that way. But in the vein of author statements, his statements about the godliness of their power source and the unlimited potential they have, yeah, I can work with that. I'm still iffy on actually giving the characters things like infinite AP off of just nothing, besides the fact that they could potentially reach that point. Like, yeah, could Purple Tigress hit with infinite strength? Sure. Could someone believe that already as it is right now? Yeah, I can't stop you. If you want to scale her that high, you're entirely entitled to. I just don't. Shout out to my patrons, A, Skyman, and Jar Evolved. What are your thoughts on everything I've said? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more, and if you're on mobile and you like this video despite how messy it is, hype it as well. Thank you, and good day.